Hello and welcome to the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast with your hosts Cameron and Josh. Today we have a special guest who is not only a member of our league, but also, and I believe this is true, the biggest Gardner Minshew fan in the world. Welcome, Ethan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And you know what? You said it perfectly. I am the biggest Gardner Minshew fan. Ever since I saw his first game at that Applebee's, oh man, I was hooked.
And what is your favorite thing about Gardner Minshew? A lot of people
Y-
say the stash, but I know you have something special about him you like.
It's just the way he looks. Did you see his car? The one he posted like 2 years ago? He got a Jaguar on the hood of it. You believe that? I love the dedication to the team.
That's pretty amazing for an Eagles player.
It's pretty, what? No, when he was on the Jaguars, you remember.
Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it because we're going to go ahead and roll right into our first matchup of the week. And it is one that did not go as expected because, Josh, somehow you won. How did you sneak that out?
Well, I mean, I'd normally beat you as it is, anyways, but it's definitely thanks to heroic efforts from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pittman, and no thanks to Cole Kmet and Allen Robinson.
As I understand it, you were at the Bears stadium doing a rain dance. That's correct? To make sure that Trey Lance couldn't pass the ball?
Yes, we'll go with that story. Yes,
Okay. I realize it kind of backfired on you getting Komet, but I think restricting Lance to like 20 passing yards was probably worth it for you, so.
sacrifices must be made to get the W sometimes.
Now, Ethan, you had a special comment about the Cowboys' defense right before we started recording. What was that?
Well, I mean, I think it speaks for the Cowboys in general, but fucking, ugh, I'd hate to be a fan.
That truly would be one of the worst possible feelings. I can't imagine. So we're gonna go ahead and roll right into the next matchup with Sam and Preston, and Sam taking the dub by just 8 points. Now, Josh, what things stand out to you when you first look at this matchup?
So obviously you have Josh Allen being Josh Allen with 31, almost 32 points. Pretty good effort by Michael Thomas coming back. And other than with the exception of Kenyon Drake and Russell Gage, just overall decent players for Sam. Nothing too fancy, nothing too big, but overall just solid with those two exceptions. And on the other hand, a lot of his players didn't do so well, but he had good efforts from Ryan Tannehill, Jerry Judy, and Joe Mixon, and that pretty much carried him almost to the victory, but just fell short.
Absolutely. Now, Ethan, Adam Thielen only got 6.6 points this game, despite the fact that the Vikings won 23-7. Are you worried at all about Adam Thielen for the rest of the season?
I mean, if I was Preston, I'd be quaking in my boots. But luckily for me, I ain't on that ride.
That is true. That is correct. You are not in on that ride. All right, moving on to our next matchup, we had Brandon versus Chris. Now, Chris has quite the spectacular profile picture there, but it was not enough to get him the win versus Brandon, losing by 10 points. And it all came down to a very special player on Chris's side, and that'd be Najee Harris. One of the players that I believe he was his first pick, if not his second round pick for Chris. It was a big gamble getting the running back from the Steelers there and going down with an injury about halfway through the game. And if that wasn't enough, Keenan Allen also got injured, and Elijah Mitchell also got injured. However, great effort by Chris to still put up 111.8 points. It's still more than I got, so well done to him. Now, Josh, go ahead and talk to us about what Brandon's team looked like.
So, Brandon, you have Pat Mahomes going for basically 35 points, very solid. Damian Harris, timeshare, had a rough week for New England, but he still managed to get almost 8 points. DeAndre Swift, who's a beast, got 26 and a half. Even texted me after the Lions game saying, "Yep, you were right about DeAndre Swift. He is a beast." Because me and him traded Derrick Henry for DeAndre Swift and some other players. Tyreek Hill did Tyreek things, 18 points, solid. And the rest of the players were just kind of meh. Singletary had a decent, like an okay week. Tyler Bass did Tyler Bass things, but other than that, the rest of the players were just kind of mediocre.
Absolutely. Now, DK Metcalf, Ethan, that guy's been a little bit of a controversial topic. People saying, well, last year DK scored more points with Geno Smith at quarterback, but 8.6 in a game there, they were throwing quite a bit in the first half. Can you talk to me? Is DK Metcalf someone you're worrying about?
Being against or having on my team?
Let's go ahead and say both. Which are you? Would you be excited to see DK Metcalf on the other person's team?
Honestly, I wouldn't. It's kind of in the middle because I wouldn't be too worried if I was against him. But if I was really hurting for someone and I see him drop from someone's team, I might think about picking him up.
I think it's a fair comment. I'd imagine we're getting quite a lot of people wondering if they should be dropping DK Metcalf in those shallower leagues. I know in my league, DK Metcalf did get dropped by someone, and I'm staring at my bench of Drake London and Elijah Moore, and I'm going, I'd rather have my guys than Metcalf. I did not like what I saw, but I imagine someone will be needing to start him every week, so we'll see how that goes.
One thing I'm looking at might be worrying. Chris has two players out. That might be quite the concern for next week.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is out for tomorrow night's game, and Elijah Mitchell is also out. And I imagine if Chris hasn't put him on IR, he's dropped him.
That wouldn't shock me.
Josh, how are you feeling about the Elijah Mitchell situation in the 49ers backfield?
It's a mess, to put it lightly. At this point, I'm all out on Elijah Mitchell. I would just drop him if I'm being completely honest. When he comes back, who knows what kind of form he'll be in. As for the rest of them, shoot your shot. One of them will land, hopefully. Hopefully, you just land on the right one.
I think that's about all we have for this matchup. Moving on to the next one, Billy with his first ever drafted team. He picked every player himself, getting the dub versus Jaden, winning by, I believe, our largest margin of the week with 37 point ahead of Jaden, 119 points exactly. Chris Godwin, despite going out with the injury, still was able to put up 6.5 points. And then look at what Billy did with that second part of the screen. Travis Kelsey, 26 points, and A.J. Brown, 25 and a half. That is putting the hurt in this matchup.
And don't forget on the first screen, you also have Cordell Patterson with 22 as well.
Absolutely. Sad that the Falcons were somehow choking another game, but not at all surprised.
Exactly.
Ethan, what do you have to say about Aaron Rodgers? I know that in the league that we or in the season we had just 2 years ago, Aaron Rodgers was one of the three quarterbacks you had on your team all year. MVP season, bounce back year for Aaron Rodgers. That's not what he's looking like here, is it?
Yeah, I'm looking at this 370 score and I'm just wondering like what happened. I mean, like did he have a heart attack on the field?
He
Like
might.
seven? What's he doing out there? Like is he okay?
Yeah, it looks like he was probably a little too much on those horse tranquilizers that he was taking, and it didn't really work out for him today. Perhaps he should stick to Gatorade next time.
Maybe. It's just sad to see my hero, falling so far.
Now, to talk a little bit more about Jaden's team, Josh, what are your thoughts on Robert Woods, Chase Claypool, and honestly, let's go to Juju because we're big Chiefs fans here, but he did have that fumble, and I'm a little worried about his usage in the future because of it.
All right, so I'll start with Robert Woods. This is not what you want to see from the veteran on a team that has basically no veteran leadership in that locker room. Only 2.3 points. Now, I don't know how many targets he had off the top of my head, so it might have been just one of those he didn't catch many of them. But this is something you don't want to see, so he's one of those I would just try to avoid right now if I were Jaden. It's Claypool. He's kind of more your big upside. You're hoping for that one big play, and it just didn't happen this week. It's rather unfortunate. They did have to go up against a good defense, and their offense did look like shit, if I'm going to be completely honest. So it's rough. As for Juju, fumbles might be an issue. Granted, receivers, they're not as good with ball protection as running backs. However, he was targeted quite a bit. So that is a player I would keep Ira Jane moving forward, just so that way he can get all those targets and get some more PPR points that way.
I think that is good advice. All right, moving on to the next matchup, we have Bandon versus Kyler, and Kyler taking dominantly first place with almost 135 points, and Bandon putting up a solid effort with 127, but it was not enough. So looking
That
at
is
the, let's first go on to the first running back taken on each of these teams. 10.6 points by Aaron Jones, 5.9 by Ezekiel Elliott. Ethan, are those things to worry about with these two running backs? They're hotly debated all the time as being about the same age and usually going around the same spot in drafts every year. Do we need to worry about those two running backs?
Yeah, I'd be worried about this being just like the first game. This kind of sets the precedent. Some people might not think that they can get better later in the season, but I mean, if this is their fresh game. Like this is start of the season. They should be ready and excited to be playing some football. But like 5, 10 points, that's just kind of. I feel like there's a lot better sleepers on the waiver that can replace them.
All right. Now, two players that we do not need to worry about. Josh, talk to me about Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson. Is this what we should expect from these two each week?
maybe not quite as good as these two did this week. However, I would expect them to be in that upper echelon of wide receivers, scoring on most weeks at least above 25. Monte Adams, he continued to do what he started off doing last year, just being a complete monster on the field. And then Justin Jefferson looked even better than he did last year, which is saying something considering how he was one of the best receivers last year.
All right, and the last person I wanted to highlight there is Devonta Smith. Was definitely a bum of the week candidate. I mean, getting absolutely 0 points in a 38-point game from the Eagles is definitely a good candidate for bum of the week, but not someone we all selected here, but should definitely deserves a shout out.
Yeah, how do you even get 0 points? I mean, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, impressively bad. I have definitely seen him dropped in a few leagues. Josh, would you be dropping Devonte Smith if he was on your team?
For me personally, I would say yes. However, if you need a receiver, you needed some kind of upside. He did have 4 targets, he just didn't happen to bring any of them in. And worst case scenario, he might be a good upside type of play if you're needing that. The Eagles' offense is a very good offense, so if you're desperate enough, I would keep him. But me personally, I would drop him.
Honestly, I could see Vanden dropping this immediately because that's got to sting. Losing by what 7 points and one player scoring zero. That's just like I feel like there's might be a bit of motion behind dropping him.
Yeah, I can guarantee there are waiver players that scored at least 7 points and would have got him the win. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our last matchup of the week, and that was our very own special guest, Ethan, who did win by 7 points versus
Oh
Malachi.
yeah,
Now, Ethan,
oh yeah.
talk to us. How did you get the win?
Honestly, I was feeling a little bit upset because all fault of my own. I confused the draft day. I thought it was the ninth. So I came in opening my fantasy expecting a not very good team. But then I open it. What do I see? I've been auto drafted. A beast team. An absolutely awesome team. And I'm surprised that I got all of these. I mean, it's weird to me that I recognize everyone on my team because normally I don't recognize a lot of these players.
Yeah, absolutely. Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback already. Leonard Fournette putting up good points. Javante Williams putting up a ton of points. Cooper Cup repeating right where he left off last year. I think you had one of the top tight ends in Zach Ertz. I mean, this was just a great showing by your team. And not to take anything away from Malachi, he just didn't wasn't able to put up enough points to contest with you this week. And has a good roster overall. I think he made the right start with these players. It just didn't turn out. Josh, talk to me about Gabriel Davis. Gabriel Davis putting up 18.8 points.
So yeah, talking about Gabriel Davis,
Davius.
very solid wide receiver too. Hell, I'd probably say he's actually the best wide receiver two right now in the NFL. I mean,
Woo.
after Tyler Lockett, of course.
Of course.
But with Josh Allen as his quarterback, we have nothing to fear. He was targeted quite a bit. He's kind of more the deep play guy. Granted, Stephon Diggs also had a very big play towards the end of the game. However, with either one of those two players, I wouldn't worry. Gabe Davis, very solid pick. Would be pretty good for the rest of the year, bargain. And
All right. Well, then, any closing thoughts on their matchups of the week?
a lot of
All
very
right.
close games, something that you like to see.
Absolutely. All right. Well, then we're going to go ahead and move on to our next segment, which is a new one.
Moving on, we got bums of the week.
All right, and for our first bum of the week, we have Russell Gage starting for Sam's team, and what a disappointment there. 3.3 points from Russell Gage in a game where Julio Jones was getting more targets than Gage, a 34-year-old Julio Jones was getting more target than Russell Gage, who they specifically targeted this offseason. Big disappointment there from Russell Mange, getting 3.3 points.
That it was.
Now, Josh, you chose Kyle Pitts, the Pitts, for your selection.
Yes. So Kyle Pitts, you expect him to be a beast at the tight end, difference maker. You need to compete with those people that have your Kelseys, your Andrews. And when you consider what Chris gave up just to acquire Kyle Pitts, it's like, was it even worth it? He didn't even get to 4 points. He did absolutely nothing for Chris's team. If he had performed like many people expected, Chris very well would have won that game instead of losing.
Absolutely, and usually when you see a receiver, whether it's a tight end or wide receiver, and you see them get such little points, you're like, well, were they just game scripted out? Were they just ahead and ran the ball? No. The Falcons ended up putting up 26 points to 27 of the Saints and were throwing the ball quite a lot, resulting in a great fantasy week for Marcus Mariota. But Kyle Pitts, that's pretty bad. Are you worried about his future?
I'm not too worried at the moment. If this trend continues for the next few weeks, then I'd definitely keep an eye on it. Right now, I would just write it off as one of those weeks where it's just tough luck. Sometimes it happens. Definitely something to keep an eye on later. Moving on.
All right, and then moving on to Ethan, you chose a player of your own, and that is CD Lame.
That's right. It's just like with all of these. It's not all about how many points they got. It's what's expected of them based on their history. I mean, CD Lamb, like people know that. People know that name. They're like, "Oh yeah, CD Lamb. Yeah, good player." What's this putting up 5 points first week? Maybe it's just the Cowboys, but I just don't see what could have gone wrong here.
Yeah, and you can't say it's a lack of targets from Dak or Cooper Rush. I think he had about 10 targets. Double digit targets is something Russell Gage and Kyle Pitts definitely would have wanted themselves and would have been able to do something with, but 5 points from CD Lamb in a game that was basically a shutout from Tampa Bay. Are you worried about his future being on your team?
I mean, I got some options on the bench, let me tell you that. So I might just see if he shakes out in the next couple of weeks. If not, I might end up dropping him.
Well, that is definitely something I'll be looking out for. I know that a big reason of his low points was the fact that his quarterback did get injured in the game and will be out for the next few weeks. But if Dak comes back, I think we have some bright future ahead of us for CD Lame. But for now, he deserves the bum of the week spot. All right, now moving on to our next segment, we have the waiver weapons. Now, waiver weapons are players who are on waivers who could start for someone this week. And the first selection we have here is Ethan's.
Ryan, call me. I'm calling it right now. Ryan, top of the hill this season. I'm never very accurate with these predictions, but I'm lucky with them a lot of the times. And I feel like I just got a feeling about this that this will be good. I think. Let's see, who was it that dropped it? Was it Jaden?
We'll say yes.
Okay, whoever dropped it, I remember someone did. I think they're going to be missing out. Just my opinion.
It was Preston who dropped him.
Preston, who
Preston.
dropped
Yeah.
him.
I think he should at least kept him on the bench, see how he does. But I think this will be big because I know some people might be hurting for a quarterback in this league. I think this could be a good, backup.
Absolutely. And now, Josh, to talk a little bit more about Ryan Top of the Hill here as Ethan's waiver weapon choice of the week. Ryan Top of the Hill, is he someone you would start over someone you're worried about like Trey Lance or maybe someone like Dak Prescott who got injured or maybe even Joe Burrow who had a horrible week 1 against the Steelers defense that isn't the defense we've come to know them as?
Of those names you listed, probably the only one I would even think about as of right now is Trey Lance, and that just depends on the matchup. Um, Brian, top of the hill, to me, he's kind of more of a situational play. He should still be pretty good. However, there's always going to be that one person who's slightly better, in my opinion. So he's a good streaming candidate where, oh, hey, Cousins has a bad matchup this week. Let me put in Ryan Tannehill instead, type of thing.
Absolutely. Well, then we're going to go ahead and move right on to your waiver weapon pick of the week and Pat Fryerloose.
Yes. Pat Fryermuth, aka Pat Fryer Loose, is an excellent tight end option this week. So right now he sits on waivers. He was the tight end 7 this last week, so very solid effort by him. Fun fact, it was actually Chris who had dropped him. If he had picked him up, who knows? He might have been a little bit closer. I don't think he would have won, but it definitely would have been close. Um, with the Steelers' offense looking how it is, he should get plenty of targets because Mitch Trubisky can't throw deep very well. And a lot of times he's scrambling, so he wants that big familiar target, which in this case happens to be his tight end, Pat Fryermuth. Moving forward, I think he's a very good candidate. And again, when you get down to the end zone, you always want to look for your big body guys. You want to look for your tight ends. He is a very big tight end.
Definitely a good person to gamble on getting a touchdown. Now, we do also know that Najee Harris is questionable for week 2 after re aggravating that Liz Frank injury that he had during the preseason. Ethan, I know that you're a big Jalen Warren fan, the backup running back for the team. Do you think this helps Pat Fryerloose to get more targets and in case Najee's injured or is even limited?
I feel like that they'll want someone who at least was on their team before. Even just a week's difference. They'll, I think, yeah, this will help them. They will, I'm not sure if they'll trust the new guy very soon.
Absolutely. And then moving on, we have my waiver weapon of the week in Joshua Palmer of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I chose Josh Palmer for a big reason, and that's the fact that the Chargers are playing the Chiefs tomorrow night, Thursday night football. I believe it's going to be on Amazon, and it's going to be a fantastic game. I am so excited to see Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes go at this. Now, looking at what the Chiefs did this offseason, obviously they got rid of Tyreek Hill, but what they were able to do by getting rid of Tyreek Hill was that they were able to bring in a ton of different prospects onto that defense. Bringing in guys like Justin Reed, the safety who was getting kicks, drafting Trent McDuffie, getting George Karlaftis, Leo Chenal. These are all fantastic defensive players that I think will definitely bolster the Chiefs' defense. However, there was one position group that was not addressed enough, and after losing Tyrann Mathieu, that secondary is looking quite suspect. Yes, Justin Reed was brought in as a safety to somewhat replace him, and I guess to kick some field goals because he was able to get at least a PAT and a couple kickoffs real good. I worry about what they're going to be able to do over the top because with Trent McDuffie out, already injured and out for the week, L'Jarius Sneed and Rashad Fenton. Am I right with that, Josh? Are the starting corners then?
That sounds right, yes.
Yeah, I am very suspect of those two. And with Keenan Allen out, I think the team's only going to be able to try and lock up Mike Williams. And so guys like Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, and whatever that other rookie wide receiver the Chargers brought in, I think those guys are going to have some big opportunities to show off what they have. And Josh Palmer is one of those that I believe in.
Is a very good pick by you. I actually had him on my bench just recently. However, I decided to go and drop him for a long-term prospect instead. But if you're needing a weekly start this week, Josh Palmer is a very good flex option, wide receiver two. Heck, he might even break wide receiver one. This should be a high-scoring game. So naturally, with high-scoring games means a lot of fantasy points. And Justin Herbert's going to have to throw to someone other than Mike Williams. So Josh Palmer looks like to be one of the best options he has to throw to.
All right, well then I'm going to go ahead and rattle off a bunch of comparisons for our waiver weapons of the week. First, I'll ask you both Ryan Tannehill or Trey Lance. Who are you starting this week? Josh, we'll go to
Does
you
he
first.
play? Who they play off the top of your head?
Um, Let me check that. The 49ers play the Seahawks, so that should be a pretty good matchup for them there. The Seahawks gave up quite a decent amount of points to Russell Wilson, and the Titans play the
Looks like it's the
the
Bills.
Bills.
Give me Trey Lance.
Not trusting top of the hill. Brian top of the hill versus
Come on,
Bills
think of the
fans.
name.
Yeah, Josh,
He'll
think of
be
the name.
fine this week. However, Trey Lance against that Seahawks defense, which did give up a lot of points, I'm taking my money on Trey Lance this time around.
All right, how about you, Ethan?
I brought him into the conversation. I feel like I got to stick with him. I feel like he'll listen. I just got a feeling. I don't know how to explain it. I just got a feeling.
All right, well, the big Black Eyes Peas fan is thinking Ryan Top of the Hill is going to have a good week. Moving on then to Pat Fryerluth. Josh, Pat Fryerluth, and the Steelers, who are playing the Patriots this week, or Kyle Pitts, who's playing the Rams.
Death is not an option in this case.
Death is not an option. You got to start one of those two.
Uh, Probably I like our good friend Ethan. I gotta stick with the guy I put on waivers. Elpis should be good. However, he usually won't get touchdowns. However, I think Fryermuth will get a touchdown at least. So I'm putting my money on Pat Fryermuth.
All right, how about you, Ethan?
It's always a good idea to go with the smartest person in the room. And when it comes to football, Josh is probably the smartest one I know. So I got to back him on this one.
I like it. That's a good answer. All right, and then lastly, moving on to the waiver weapons. Josh Palmer of the Los Angeles Chargers, who are playing the Chiefs this week, or, and you're not gonna like this one, CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys, who is
Josh
going to
Palmer,
be
Josh
playing
Palmer,
a
Josh
really
Palmer,
tough matchup versus, I believe, the Bengals.
Josh Palmer. Easy.
Straight
Josh
away,
Palmer.
Josh Palmer, easy choice for Josh. How about you, Ethan? Your boy
Oh,
CD or the new hotness in Josh Palmer?
it's I really gonna trust like a better performance from CD Lamb next week. I mean, also you talk about next week. Look at week 3 for Josh Palmer, the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's got to be something to consider when you know what? I'd go Josh Palmer.
I think I'm going to agree down the board. I think I would take our waiver weapon choices of the week. I'm not sure, as the owner of Trey Lance, whether or not I'll be able to drop someone to pick up Ryan top of the hill to start over him, but it may be something I consider as we get closer to game time. Well, that about does it then for the fantasy podcast that we have this week. Thank you all for listening to the False Start Fantasy Podcast. In episode 2, you can find me at Cameron's Ego on Twitter and Josh at Josh Newshafer. You can follow Ethan by following him around at his home because he's not on social media. Anything left to say from our special guest this week?
I'm glad that you start with the person who knows the least about football, so you can kind of work your way up, so that you're not giving away too many secrets at the beginning of the draft. I get it, smart move, guys. But thanks for having me. It's been great.
Well, thank you for joining us. Anything left to add, Josh?
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. All right. And we will be back next week before week 3 begins. So be on the lookout for our next episode so you can be ready before the ball is snapped. Thank you and goodbye.